Welcome to episode 8 of the Select Characters podcast. My name is Chris, I'll be your host for the coming episode, and I'm joined as always by my two American friends, Sam and Enrique. Hello guys.
How's it going?
Hey.
The people who are listening don't know this, but it took us 3 tries to record that little segment, so well fucking done, guys.
We're professionals.
Consummate professionals, all of you. Hey, I wanna talk about this week because it feels like Christmas. The Steam sale is going on right now, and we've got E3 in just a couple of days. Well, at the time of recording, it's 2 days away now, so that's exciting. And to tide us over until that happens, we've got the Steam sale, and it's been all right.
Yeah, pretty solid so far. But this whole week is absolutely jam-packed with gaming goodness.
Have you guys picked up anything good on Steam sales so far?
I picked up one thing, and that's not even a game. That's a bit of DLC for Borderlands 2, and that is the Necromancer character, because I didn't have that one.
Oh, nice. Have you picked up Tiny Tina's Dragon's Keep?
Oh yeah, I've got the Game of the Year edition.
Okay.
I have had it ever since it came out. I've got 111 hours clocked into that game.
I just bought that. I bought the Game of the Year edition during this Steam sale. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. But there's still like DLCs that you still need to buy even when you buy the Game of the Year.
Yeah, it's the holiday themed mini pieces of DLC. They're fun. They're worth the money, but you can skip them.
Yeah, I think I might. I feel a little put off by that, but I think the game's probably good enough that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
In the long run.
It's a pretty good game. What else? Oh, yeah, I did pick up the 2014 version of Magic the Gathering. And that was also the first time I used Steam refunds, because that game just doesn't feel right. But I'll talk about that a little more when we talk about what we have been playing this week.
Ooh, how was the refund process for you?
It was really easy. You could just request a refund for any reason whatsoever. I happened to pick that it wasn't what I expected it to be, and I got my money back within the hour. So it's a painless process.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody, at least I know, went through it. That's good to hear some reports from the field on that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not planning on doing that all the time. Like, I only want to do it when I actually don't like a game or a game doesn't run well. I'm not going to abuse it. But it's kind of nice that you've got a safety net for bad purchases or impulse buys. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually used one too, because I bought Turbo Dismount, which is, I guess, like a more fleshed out version of the stair dismount games, where you got to throw the guy down the stairs and get the damage. But that one wasn't for me because it just unlocks everything from the start. So I guess it was just way too free form for me.
Yeah.
So I wasn't feeling it at all. And I think it's cool that now you can refund something instead of having it sit in your library forever. Although I am all about that +1. I guess I'd also like my 250.
Fair enough. All right, we've got the E3 coming up, and we've had a steady stream of leaks over the past couple of weeks, and I'm the most excited about the leak that Dishonored 2 is going to be announced. That's going to be awesome, because I love Dishonored. Can
we talk about leaks for a second? Like, when there's that steady of a stream of leaks, can they really be considered that anymore?
That's a good question. I don't know how you'd prove it, but it certainly does feel like leaks are the new marketing campaign.
Yeah, it just feels like it's like a type of native advertising where they'll release it a few days beforehand, and they gauge people's interest, and I don't know, it's just...
Yeah, well, is it really a bad thing, though?
Yeah, it's not, but I just think it's interesting because, this isn't like 1 or 2 games that get leaked. I mean, if you go on with our games, there's 2-3 pages worth of leaked game, leaked trailer, leaked game. It's like, all right, guys, like, you guys just either have a really shitty PR team or, like, there's something more going on here.
Yeah.
It seems like it. I mean, when they're all shrugging their shoulders as hard as they can, like, oops, I guess this leaked out.
Guys, I accidentally hit send all instead of save.
Yeah, silly me. Classic Brian, right? Like, it just seems like, I don't know, man. It seems like maybe leaks are the new thing.
If anything, it makes me even more excited for the actual shows, because you do know that there are still a lot of AAA games that they haven't announced or haven't leaked. So
of course.
I'm still looking forward to watching the shows, because the shows are always good fun, because they're cliche, sometimes painfully so. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, of course.
You just like the horror and pain of others?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember that, but I think that was last year, and it was during one of the conferences. One American lady and a Japanese developer, they walked on stage, and the Japanese developer, he looked very, very nervous, and he was holding a fork in his hand. So presumably he was eating something right before he had to go on stage. Forgot that he had a fork in his hand. He walked on stage with the fork, and the moment that he had to speak, he saw his eyes flick to the fork in his hand, and like a look of pure terror came over him. And the only thing that he could stammer was, "Hi, I am Japanese, I guess." And then he clenched the fork. It was amazing. It was amazing. Like it's for stuff like that I want to watch the shows, because stuff goes wrong and it's always hilarious when it does. I like it.
See, I like it not so much because it's hilarious, but it humanizes people like that, because it's not just these crazy PR guys trying to sell you a product. It's it's genuine developers. It's normal people that are there, and they get nervous, they get excited over the games, things like that. So it's always kind of cool to see that stuff.
It's normal people and Phil Spencer.
Phil Spencer's like his own separate. It's like Reggie for Nintendo. Like they're their own entities.
I do miss Don Matrick and his jackets.
Oh god. Oh man, he was like the Fonzie of the gaming world.
Yes, he was. All right, guys. E3 is coming up. We're probably going to be talking about that next week. But for now, let's talk about what we have been playing this week.
Awesome.
So, what have we been playing this week? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I actually went back and started playing Fallout 1 and 2. I had actually bought these two games. I got them for free on Good Old Games a while back when Interplay and Bethesda kind of had it out for a while. Where I think Interplay and Black Isle Studios and all that, they were the original creators of the Fallout franchise. And I guess they got into a big spat with Bethesda, because how they own the copyright, the trademark for the name now. And there's a little bit of bad blood between them. And I guess Good Old Games kind of throwing the support for them. They released Fallout 1, 2 Tactics for free on there, and I had I went on there and I downloaded it, and I completely forgot about it until I was clicking through the Steam sales, and I saw that Fallout 1 and 2 were on sale for like $2.99. I was like, I already own this. Fuck that.
Yeah.
So went back and started playing that, and God, man, I forgot how much fun those games are. They definitely aged really well.
All right, you wouldn't expect that.
Well, I mean, it's like the conversation we had a while ago, where it's not so much the graphics. It's they took effort to create really interesting mechanics. They have a really fun art style. So even playing it now, I mean, it holds up really, really well. It's still like the hex turn-based combat, really fun RPG. Like the moral choices, decisions you can make throughout the game, the worlds to explore. It's just the whole package. It's fun.
Have you done a run with zero intelligence yet?
Not zero intelligence, because that's almost impossible. But I did the the 1 or 2 intelligence, whatever kind of thing. Yeah, that's an interesting way to solve some of the things.
Did they release anything like I know for Planescape Torment you can get like the add-on packs, like the HD pack and stuff that are community made, including a lot of bug fixes and stuff like that. Is there anything like that for those?
Not that I've seen. It wouldn't surprise me if there is, because I know they have the Fallout Vault, where a lot of people kind of do a couple patches. They made the character editors and things like that, but I haven't looked enough into that, so I wouldn't be able to give you an honest answer.
It'd be interesting to see if they did, because I know it brought a lot of new life into Planescape Torment for me.
I've never actually played that game.
It's pretty solid. It's still good.
Yeah, so I've been told. Just never go around to playing it.
You should. For me, I've been playing Pillars of Eternity.
Oh, right, you're back to that one.
Back to that one.
All right.
Decided to dive back in. I hit a weird point in The Witcher where I guess I got overwhelmed with too much.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It just seemed way too wide, so I wanted to duck back into something kind of similar. So I got back into Pillars a little bit, and still loving it. That game is still great. It's the combination of pausing with the real-time combat that doesn't... if it's only pause... It can get a little bit it feels slow, but since you can turn it real time whenever you want, it takes that problem away. It's slow when you want it to be. So that's still good. Other than that, like I said, a little Witcher 3, and that about wraps up my week.
So,
have you progressed any more in the infinite dungeon in Pillars of Eternity?
I figured out where I need to go. I got to the bottom, and there's a part that you can't get farther in unless you actually go and explore a town and do some quests and stuff. So okay. I moved on to that, and then it caught me in what I think is the exact trap that they wanted, that once I got out into the real world, I found stuff to do and got off track.
Nice.
Yeah, so I forgot about that door in the bottom of that dungeon and just started wandering around doing quests in town and stuff like that. I think that was their exact intention, and I totally fell for it. But that's fine. Fell for it in a good way.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to just be able to choose whatever you want to do in the game at whatever moment.
I'm worried about The Witcher, man, in a way that it seems like I might be reaching the top of that hump where all of a sudden you just roll down to the bottom of the hill, there's not really any hard climbing left to do.
Yeah, I've had that I reached that point 2 weeks ago, and I just didn't play that game for like a week. Because that's an interesting problem, isn't it? Because we're always complaining about games not having enough content, but I'm starting to think that The Witcher 3 might have too much content.
Yeah, or because the more you have, it's harder to dole out those progressive chunks and keep people from getting to that point where they crest the top of the hill and then just snowball barrel through the rest of the game. Yeah. Because if you're just running from question mark to question mark and you're never dying and you're just slicing people up and then you keep running, like, it kind of gets boring pretty quickly.
Well, you don't have to finish it this week or next week. You can finish it whenever you like.
That's true too. But I think I'll probably end up going back to it and maybe just ignore all that stuff and just do the main quest, at least to see what that's all about.
Yeah. And the story is still quite good. All right, anything else?
I think that about covers it.
All right, then I'll finish up by saying that I've been playing, of course, The Witcher 3 because I still like that game, and I started playing it again now after taking a little break for a week. But yesterday I bought Magic the Gathering 2014 on the Steam sale because the base game with all the DLC was dirt cheap. And, I heard that Hearthstone was based on Magic the Gathering, so I wanted to give it a go. I tried it for an hour and a half and requested a refund because Hearthstone has spoiled me in terms of the presentation.
Was that your first Magic the Gathering experience?
Not really. I did play the physical card game like years ago.
Okay, all right. I was like, oh, dude, I was going to feel really bad for you because that would have been the worst. If somebody told you, like, this is kind of like Hearthstone, so you bought the game and then jumped right into it.
No.
But that's much better.
Yeah. I played the physical game years back. Hearthstone has just spoiled me in terms of how collectible card games are represented in games. The interface is just illogical and it doesn't look as good and it doesn't feel right. And I don't know, I just didn't like it. It wasn't what I expected it to be, which is a shame because I quite liked playing the physical card game when I played it with friends. Nothing to be done against that.
Yeah, I like the puzzle mode in their digital releases. Where I think Hearthstone would maybe even benefit from something like that. Like, you see people trying to puzzle out how they can get kill shots, like, all the time. Like, what do I have to do to get lethal here? Mm-hmm. And the little puzzle modes in Magic are kind of similar to that in some ways. Sometimes they have a different goal, but that'd be pretty fun if they put that in Hearthstone too.
Yeah, isn't something like that actually coming in a form of, what was it, Tavern Brawl mode or something?
Tavern Brawl.
Yeah, I think so. Where you have to make a deck based on specific rules or stuff like that.
Oh, dude, I love that. When I play Magic, it's like booster draft all the time. Yeah. That's my favorite thing.
Well, that's going to happen with Hearthstone as well, so.
Oh, man, I'd love it. I'll come back to Hearthstone if they do that.
I would play with you, but for some reason, you can't take all your cards with you when you change region.
Boo.
Which makes it only an interesting feature for new players.
Really?
Yes. You can't bring all your cards, your entire collection over to the US if you're in the EU. And you can't bring all your bought heroes in Heroes of the Storm over to the US when you're in the EU, which is kind of weird.
Wow, so they're really, really separate.
Yeah, they're trying to double dip, essentially. Yeah. Okay, that's all I've been playing this week. Shall we move on to the first topic?
I think we should.
Let's go! I want to talk about MMOs because it's a genre, if you want to call it that is very dear to my heart. And it sort of pains me to see that the genre is slowly dying, or at least its current form is dying. So I thought that we could just discuss it, where it's going, why it's not getting as much people as it used to, that sort of thing.
It does seem like it's really trailed off. Yeah. I mean, a few games have come out trying to be the WoW killer, I guess. Like, they kind of all say they're going to be, but no MMO has ever been big since World of Warcraft.
Well, and it's weird because Blizzard, Blizzard does what Blizzard does, and they took the MMO formula. Because before WoW, it was EverQuest was probably like the one that dominated the market. Mm-hmm. You had RuneScape, EverQuest, and then WoW came about, and they completely streamlined the experience to a degree. This became like the benchmark for how an MMO needs to be done from here on out. And it's weird because all MMOs that have come out since have fall into one or two categories where they're either trying to copy WoW, word for word, and it ends up becoming just another clone that people eventually lose interest, or they're trying something so radically different that it's almost off-putting to I guess, people that are already, like so involved in WoW.
Yeah. And not only that, even if they were to copy WoW word for word, they'd still not have the 10 years of polish that WoW has. It's kind of hard to beat that.
Yeah, I think that the climate right now is just maybe not MMO friendly. Like, if you think back to when EverQuest came out, when I played EverQuest, like, getting a cable modem was a big deal. You know, there was not a computer in every home. It was like people were playing. GameSpy was still a thing, like, to find servers to play games on. And then you have
man.
Oh, wow.
Right? And then EverQuest comes on the scene, and it's like totally mind-blowing. Like, to be in a place with all these people in the same virtual world and hanging out and like doing trades and stuff, it just totally nuts. And then that sort of had its time and then passed. And I think WoW caught like the very end of that sort of climate of PC gaming, when people were still like, when we weren't spoiled for so much choice, like there weren't as many games coming out all the time, and a big game that came out could have a huge impact and draw all these people. And the other thing was that people hadn't sort of fully conditioned themselves against that MMO loop yet. People hadn't invested billions of hours and then looked back on it and realized that maybe they were kind of bummed out about what they got in the end. And so, you know, people were still ready for an MMO, but I think now it's just not that way anymore. It's just a different overall climate.
I think the landscape is changing, and the definition of what an MMO used to be is changing as well. Because people seem to go for stuff like Destiny, the way that's set up, which is a sort of like Borderlands-y type multiplayer thing. And then you've got the crew, where you share your single player experience with a lot of other people on the same map. But I don't know, man. A lot of my best moments, or my favorite moments in my tenure as a gamer, if you want to call it that, are from MMOs, and especially World of Warcraft, and even the newer stuff like WildStar. There's just something about the genre that pulls me in. I think it's the exploration of a very big open world together with your friends that really draws me in.
I think touching on that a little bit, and I guess taking a more macro view on it, I think that a reason the MMO genre is kind of not seeing the popularity it once did is because I think the social sphere for gaming has changed in general. Like you said, I remember playing World of Warcraft. I mean, I had like some of my best memories come from World of Warcraft. I remember because I leveled up as a Fury Warrior like you used to do, and some guy, I ran around into him, I think it was near Shadow Labyrinth back in Burning Crusade, and he said like, hey, I kind of really want to do this instance and we need a tank, do you think you could do this? And I'm talking to the guy saying, hey, I've never done this. He's like, no, don't worry, we'll walk you through it. And it was great because this is before they had Group Finder or Raid Finder or anything like that. Everything was contained within the server.
Oh yeah, that you had to go to the actual instance, like physically go there. That was great.
Asked people to join your party, and it was great because that was one of those experiences where back in the day, you could get a reputation within the server. And I remember where I played with this guy for almost like 2 months straight, just doing instances. And eventually, his guild buddies heard about me. They said, hey, we have room for a tank. I know you're still learning, but you're more welcome to join us. We'll help you out. And it's, it's a really cool experience. But now that I look at the way World of Warcraft is and just more MMOs in general, I don't really need to depend on MMO to give me that experience anymore. I have, game forums. I have game subreddits. I have, the Steam community page. I have all this meta available to me where I can form those connections, and it's not just limited to the game itself. So I think that's part of the reason why we don't see, I guess, as much of an interest in MMOs anymore, because you don't need them for that social interaction anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, that's sort of true, I guess, but I don't know. A big part of the social interaction in the game is that it's within the game. Especially when you're playing on like role-playing servers, which I never really do because it's not my thing. But
Goldshire.
Oh yes, I started a character on an RP server once just to check it out, what all the fuss was about, and I had great experiences with people who were really in character and stuff, and that was really great. But you also had the very creepy people who hung out in Goldshire, and that was just sad. It's two extremes of the concept in one server. That was a bit weird.
I never really experienced that because I started off playing on Medivh, and I got pretty into the whole raiding scene for it. But after a while, a couple server migrations, I kind of took a step back from raiding, and I just wanted to enjoy the more casual approach to the game. So I ended up moving. Like, my character sits on Earthen Ring right now, which is it's a pretty well-known RP server, and you don't really see a lot of people RPing. they have certain pages where, like there's community groups saying like, hey, like join us for an RP event at set time. We're going to meet in this location and go from there. So it's kind of cool because, like, they'll have their own set meeting place for it, but it doesn't really interfere with the game anymore.
Well, MMOs back when they were sort of becoming a big thing were kind of the only game experience where you would have downtime, where you would just be sitting around somewhere with another person. And then what else are you going to do but have a conversation, right? And so that was what created all those bonds, and it was unique. It wasn't happening anywhere else unless you wanted to go into like a AOL chat room or something. Like, to actually be able to communicate with a like-minded individual, like somebody else who likes video games, and you're actually doing work on something at the same time, forged a lot of bonds and friendships that I think people really enjoyed in a certain way.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because, like I was saying, there is nothing that an MMO can really offer you now that you can't find in any other kind of genre.
Well, they're taking out all the parts that are like that too. Like, I mean, I have to wonder if maybe MMOs on their face have never really been super great games, but it was the other players who made it worthwhile.
Right.
And if that's true, then as they streamline the process and make it, they take away, the zone where you go to just sit and watch the trade scroll and stuff like that, raid finder, and they just streamline it way too much so that you can play without interacting with anybody. Then the flaws of the actual game itself start to rear their heads, and you realize, like, you see the gear grind and you see the time investment versus what you get out of it. And you don't have a buddy that you're going through that with anymore.
I think that's definitely a big part of it. With MMOs, I know there's always been that concept of like the social obligation where you're not necessarily playing for the game itself. You're playing because other people depend on you, Like, you're showing up to raids because your team needs, like the lead healer, or the team needs the off tank.
Oh, absolutely.
You're grinding the gear because your team needs you to be there and, catch up to them. So it's, like I said, I think a lot of it was definitely that social obligation. And, with the advent of, I guess, the more convenience they include in the games now, you just don't have it anymore. And people are kind of starting to become more apparent of, like you said, the flaws in the game because you don't have anybody keeping you to the game now.
It's not true for all MMOs, though.
You think?
And one in particular, EVE Online.
EVE is a whole different beast, though, and
yeah, they carved out a niche, and they really, really went for it, and build it, and they will come. They built something unique that is attractive to a certain type of person, and they're very good at putting their hooks on you and keeping you in the game.
Well, the thing about EVE is like it has this whole meta that it's all player form. The entire community is, an economy is built from the ground up by players. And that social obligation will be there, no matter what kind of convenience they put in the game. Because, when you join the game, one of your goals is to join a corporation. You join the corporations, you have people that, hey, we'll train you, we'll give you ships, come on raids, come on, patrols with us and stuff like that. And like you form those social contracts with people on EVE, and EVE is, I don't know, it's really unique. I wouldn't even consider it like an MMO at this point.
Well, it is. It certainly is, but it's a different type of MMO than the one we're used to. A lot of different tropes apply to that specific game. By the way, Sam, as someone who's studying economy, why don't you play EVE?
Because I don't. As a game, it doesn't have what I need. I do like it as far as the stat dumps and the things you can read about people sort of working the market and from like a resource pricing angle and how that affects players. Like, as a research thing, I think it's really fascinating. But as an actual playing a game, I don't think I really jive well with it. But I also haven't tried it. That's just something I think. Maybe I should. I don't know.
Maybe you should. It sounds like your kind of game. And EVE's not really a game, it's a job.
That's the last thing I need.
Well, it's funny because I've always had friends say that EVE is it's the perfect game they'll always want to read about, but they'll never want to play.
Yes, that is definitely true. I tried it a couple of times, like bought game time. I bought it on a Steam sale for like $1.99 or something like that. And I tried it twice. And twice, I sort of stopped playing after a week because it's not the game for me, but the stuff that you hear that happens inside the game is absolutely incredible. It's very interesting to read, guys infiltrating other corporations and destroy them from the inside out and stuff like that. No other game gives you that. No other game. And that's why I think MMOs should have a place because they allow for a different form of gameplay on a very, very big scale. Maybe not in the way that Eve does it, but still, you know?
Well, and I think like because Eve still finds a way to create those social obligations, you hear these amazing stories. I remember last year there was like the bloodbath of, I want to say it was like BR5RB, which was, for anyone who doesn't know, basically like Eve has these things where like, you know, you can pay like, I guess, sovereignty bills that let you kind of take control over a system. And I remember there was a mix-up where this player in a corporation forgot to pay their sovereignty bill in time, and when that happens, it completely, basically just gets rid of your ownership of the area. Mm-hmm. And that led to, I mean, the second that happened, I think somebody else came in and scooped up ownership, and it led to this massive battle that I think in real-world money equated to about $300,000 in damages between like for ships. And it's just really cool to like hear these stories about, you know, players getting so invested in the game and these massive battles that take place. And you don't really see it on other MMOs anymore. Yeah,
which is too bad. WoW has a problem with players just doing single-player content for the most part, apart from raiding and PvP. You just log in and you go to your garrison now. And that's basically it.
Even with the raiding, you don't need to ever leave your garrison. You just queue up Dungeon Finder and you can just, you know, AFK the whole time.
So is it the drive to make the game more convenient for the players sort of working against the game itself? Is it detrimental to the experience?
I think it's a double-edged sword because, I mean, you obviously do want convenience because, I mean, ask anybody that's played WoW from vanilla and like they'll tell you that it was a really shitty time. 40-man raids were awful to organize. The flight path system was completely broken. A lot of those attunement quests, they were just a serious grind. So, I mean, I understand for the sake of wanting to attract more players, you know, introducing easier mechanics or just getting rid of some of those antiquated areas. But, and even I think was the Wrath of the Lich King was the first time they introduced the concept of, you know, what people call welfare epics, where before that point, you know, like epic gear was very rare and the only people that ever got their hands on it were, you know, people that had time to go on raids.
Yeah.
And then with Wrath of the Lich King, they kind of decided to make the decision that, hey, you know, we're going to create a system where even people that aren't necessarily going to be able to raid can still benefit from this gear, and you know they can still have like that prestige that comes along with it. And I think at that point the community started getting, you know, fragmented because people were saying that, you know, you're doing this for casuals. The term, you know, welfare epics came about, and from there on, you start seeing like that weird cross between making the game, you know, doing something for convenience sake to attract new players, and then it ends up alienating the community in general.
And it could go the other way as well if you appease to the hardcore crowd a bit too much, and that is like casuals pay the bills basically because people just want to log in and have a good time, log out when they're not having a good time anymore.
I mean, not even casuals. It's just making the game as accessible to everybody.
It's what killed WildStar though. That attunement quest, that was not the best idea.
Yeah, see, WildStar is a perfect example of that. You know, when you look at what happens when a MMO only focuses on the hardcore crowd, you start realizing, hey, you know, there's a lot of gamers in the world, but it's a very small percentage of them that can, you know, fit that quote-unquote hardcore mentality.
Or just that amount of time into their current lifestyle. Here's my question. Do you think that part of the lack of, or part of the downfall of MMOs is due to the fact that people have less desire to socialize online, like that's not a unique thing anymore? Or is it the fact that now you can socialize online basically anywhere?
I think it's the latter, because it's not for lack of desire, because I mean, like I said, for myself, you know, I used to play World of Warcraft almost religiously, and it was mainly because of the people I played with. I would log on to, you know, help them out and to play with them. But now, you know, any other game that I'm playing, I spend time on the subreddit. I talk to a community that's already formed. You know, I agree to play with them. You know, hey, you know, let's meet in the game at this date and this time, and you know, you'll do a game session. So I don't think that niche that MMOs used to have, where it created that, you know, that whole subculture, it's not there anymore. It's not necessary.
It's also pretty daunting for new players to start playing WoW, for instance, because they're on level 100 now, I believe.
I wouldn't say it's daunting, because I mean, even Blizzard has done a lot to mitigate that. They, you know, like you can buy a leveled up character. They made the actual leveling experience infinitely easier. It takes significantly less time because you get so much more like rep for experience now.
Yeah, but would you actually want to use that level up if you're a new player? Because that would mean you're missing out on a lot of content, which to me sounds like less fun.
It depends on your motivation to play. Like, if you're picking it up out of your own volition and you want to say, hey, I really want to experience this, then I can see how that would be a disservice. But if you're just picking it up because, your buddy wants you to hop on and raid with him, it's in your best interest to, pay the money that it'll just simplify the game for you. Because it's not like they just give you the skills and, you're good to go. You get like a little very self-contained quest chain that introduces the skills little by little, so you at least get some familiarity with them. And from then on, you go just to play with your buddy. So I don't think it really hurts it.
I have to wonder, at least specifically about new players, if new players are being created. Like, if the people who would be coming in, like the influx of players into an MMO has sort of dried up and is gone. Like, I wonder if MMOs came out at a time where everybody who wanted to play them played them, and then the people coming up, like the kids coming up now, don't want to play MMOs anymore.
Well, I'm not entirely sure about that, because every time WoW releases a new expansion, people flock to it.
Yeah, but how many of that is people that, just reactivate their subscriptions? They're not necessarily new players. They're old players that just want to see the content.
Yeah, that's true. I've got some data here, actually. WoW was at 7.4 million subs just before Warlords of Draenor, and it jumped to 10 million subs right after the release, and now it's dropped back to 7 million just a few months later.
See, and does it have an actual breakdown of what those subs consist of? Like, how many of them are new subscriptions versus how many of them are reactivated accounts?
I couldn't find that.
Because, I'd wager just on the pattern of, from 7 to 10 back to down to 7, 3 million of those players are probably just people that reactivated their account to see the content, and they saw the content and then they shut it off.
Let's not forget here that, yes, WoW is bleeding subs, but there's still an amazing amount of people playing that game. Like, it's like half the people in my country play that game.
I agree. Dude, 7 million is an impressive number for an MMO. What other MMO can you say off the top of your head that has those numbers right now?
None.
0.
Yeah, Eve's got 146 now. The Old Republic has 770k subscribers, which is not bad for a free-to-play one.
Right.
WildStar's sitting around 20k, and that was in the fourth quarter of last year, and that was the newest data that I could find. And then there's the Elder Scrolls Online, which is sitting around 772k. So, yes, there's still a lot of people playing those games. Well, compared to WoW, not a lot of people are playing other games, but still, they're still respectable numbers,
right.
But they are dwindling.
What I wonder is if that pool is just the size that it's going to be. Like, MMO players, the pool is 10 million people strong, and there's not new people coming into it, and there's actually old people falling off the tail end of it. Because I was a huge MMO enthusiast, but now at this point in my life, like, I don't putting that much time into something versus what I get out of it, I'm not seeing that value anymore. And so if they all want to just suck out as many of these 10 million as possible, then that's sort of an interesting situation where eventually maybe MMOs become way less popular.
I think they're less popular not because people don't like MMOs. I think they're less popular because people don't like the current style of MMOs, and something needs to change.
That's a good point.
I don't even know if it's that. I just think that there's just so many more options now for people to play. So MMOs don't necessarily have that, they don't corner the market as much as they used to.
But it'd be interesting if they ever, like, if they took down the World of Warcraft servers tomorrow, just for no reason. All right, no more World of Warcraft. What happens to those 7 million people? Like, do they get dispersed throughout WildStar and Star Wars and Elder Scrolls? Do they just disappear? It'd be really interesting.
Well, something is keeping those 7 million people playing in WoW. So you'd think that they would want to find a replacement for that game. It's interesting. I think that a shift is needed in how MMOs play, because the concept that we're playing now is essentially 15 years old at this point.
That's true.
So who knows what will happen in 10, 15, 20 years. I think MMOs are here to stay, but not in their current form.
I wanted to talk to you guys about remasters, because there are so many remasters coming out these days, and I don't know how exactly I feel about it. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but it's something with a lot of pros and cons, and I thought that maybe we could just talk about it.
Okay, let's take the negative angle here from the get-go. Why do you think it's a bad thing sometimes?
It's a bad thing because they issue the remasters trying to drum up sort of attention for something that you think they're going to make, and then they never do. Like when they remastered the Resident Evil games, like I guess they're like, everybody buys them because you think that if you let them know that that game is still cool, that they're going to make another one, and then it seems like they just issue another remaster.
I fail to see how that is a bad thing. It's taking classic games that people love, and give them a bit of a spit polish and shine, and release them so they feel like a 2015 game, at least from a visual standpoint, and sometimes from a mechanical standpoint, which I don't think is bad.
It's not on its face, but the thing is that a lot of times it's maybe the impression that I get is incorrect, but it seems to me like they're saying, we're going to remaster this, and if it sells really well, we'll know that people are still interested in this series. And perhaps that's not how they're selling it. Maybe that's just something that I see.
I think they're just repackaging nostalgia, and to varying degrees of popularity.
I can see Sam's take on it, because I think he's coming from the point of view that as a consumer, part of the hype of you buying that remaster is because, I don't know, it might not be an active thought, but I mean, there's always that idea that if we keep supporting this franchise that has been, long dead, maybe they'll resurrect it because they'll see there's enough support for it. And rather than the company taking those steps, they kind of, I don't want to call it lazy because it still is a lot of work to remaster these, but they kind of take the path of least resistance, and they would settle for just shining up a game that they've already put the majority of their effort in, rather than applying that to entirely new IP. So I feel like in a way it can kind of stifle a franchise in general, just because instead of them trying to move forward, they're just going to keep rehashing the past.
I don't necessarily think that is a bad idea, because some games that are universally loved don't really age all that well. So I think it's a great idea to just re-release them and sort of make them look prettier and make them look more contemporary. It's even better when they manage to make the remaster look like how you remember that game to be when it first came out.
But wouldn't you rather them take those themes that you liked from that franchise and completely, update them and apply them to an entirely new game installment?
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's nice to go back and replay some of my old favorites that I just don't play anymore because they don't really live up to the expectations I have of games now.
Well, see, and that's what I'm saying, because you have like these games that you loved back in the day, and instead of them taking what you loved about them and applying it to a new game now, they're just rehashing the content. So you're almost caught in this proverbial loop where you're never gonna move on and see something else over the horizon because they're constantly just throwing that back in your face. You're almost like selectively blinding yourself.
And like I said, I don't know if they pitch it as that, but it always feels like that to me. I'm not sure why. I do like the idea of a remaster on its face. I think it's a good idea, and I think especially now where it's sort of becoming a question, like video games could go away forever. Like, how do we maintain these things in an archival way that you'll be able to play them again in 20 years? Is something that people are just now starting to think about.
Yeah, that's definitely the approach that I take, and that's one of the reasons I actually personally love remakes or remasters, because, like you said, there's no way to preserve these older titles. Once the technology's past it, that's it.
Yeah, and it's just something we're only recently starting to become aware of and pay attention to. And if it wasn't for like the acts of some people who just, rip stuff into ROMs and things like that, there'd probably be games today that you wouldn't be able to play. Or it would be, overly difficult. So remasters are good. It's just they need to be done well, for one. They need to be really accurate to the original source. Also, they shouldn't sell them as like to create hype for a new like sequel to that game that's never coming. In general, yeah. I mean, I agree with what Chris says. It's really cool to play a game that you used to love back in the day and then updated to 2015 standards, and it's good stuff.
You know what I've been liking, which is, I guess that's a little bit of a deviation from the remastering concept, but you're seeing more and more developers kind of breaking away from their studios and going the independent route. And what they're doing is they're taking these concepts that created this game that you loved back in your childhood and that created all the nostalgia, and using it to create an entirely new IP. You have it with Bloodstained. They just got
Ukulele.
Ukulele, Mighty Number 9. These are all, they're taking these mechanics and concepts from Banjo-Kazooie, Castlevania, Mega Man, that they have a very important place in video game history, but they're completely modernizing and updating these mechanics. And I think it's a really awesome, system that's occurring right now, where we have, it's not a remaster, it's a reimagining.
It's a spiritual successor. That's what it is.
I mean, you would basically call it the next one, but just wink wink, because we couldn't get full license on the IP, which is cool.
I mean, and I think in a way, which is what Chris was saying at the very beginning, like the remasters, it kind of falls, halfway between what Sam and Chris were saying, where developers see that people still really love these mechanics. They still really love, the themes in these games. And every now and then a developer looks at that and says, you know what? We should definitely update this. Let's, instead of just rehashing the same game with a prettier skin, let's make something else entirely. So, you have Playtonic Games coming out with Ukulele now. Old Rare developers say, hey, obviously you guys still care about Banjo-Kazooie, so we're going to do, the next evolution of Banjo-Kazooie.
Plus, what people seem to be forgetting is a lot of the remasters are getting made because fans specifically asked for them. So, in essence, it's fan service to a certain degree.
Yeah, that's true. People definitely want that. Because if it comes to a point where you can't play the game you love anymore, it's time to remaster it. Keep that stuff in the hands of the people.
Yeah.
Man, I'll say this, though. I was super elated when they re-released Zone of the Enders collection, because that has been, aside from Metal Gear Solid, that has been one of my favorite Kojima inspired titles that they've released. It's probably one of the best mech fighter games to date. I strongly urge you to go find a copy for PlayStation 3 if you can.
I don't have a PlayStation 3 anymore.
Well, get PlayStation Now and get a month subscription and download it and play, because it's a fantastic game.
Not available in the Netherlands, unfortunately.
Why do you live in a communist country?
Do you think that they're responsible in any way to create their remasters in a sustainable way?
What do you mean?
Like the problem we just saw right there, where they did remaster Zone of the Enders, but it's PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 3 is on its way out. So 10 years from now, they didn't remaster that in a sustainable way, because eventually you're going to have the same problem that you had when they remastered it in the first place. Is it okay for us to ask them to remake those things in a way that will stand the test of time, or on a platform where they can be enjoyed for a long period of time?
It's kind of weird, because with Zone of the Enders, it was a remaster on PlayStation 3 for a PlayStation 2 game, so it's I don't know, it'd be weird to have a remaster, almost like a remaster Inception, where it's a remaster of a remaster of a remaster. But I don't know, I would really like to see those kind of games put up in a cloud, or just some place where we can access them, which is why I like the idea of PlayStation Now, even though the pricing is still a little wonky.
Mm-hmm. Is it though?
Yeah, it's a little on the pricey side, but I like the concept of, obviously there's been enough fan outcry and demand for it that Sony has decided, you know what, let's start taking a look at our old backlog of PlayStation 3 games and making them available in some shape or form to people playing the current gen consoles. And I hope that carries on to PlayStation 4 or 5, 6 or whatever comes out.
I don't know. With certain titles, I think that they're stretching it a bit too much. The Last of Us came out during the end of the PlayStation 3's lifespan, and they released it a couple of months later on PlayStation 4, which I thought was a bit rich, but I don't really know why. I think maybe because I see it as the developers sort of double dipping.
Yeah, to us it looks like that, but to the guy who just bought a PS4, he's probably pretty happy about it.
But it's weird though, because when I think of a remaster, I'm thinking of when they repolish a title that's been out of production for years. Final Fantasy X redone for the Vita and PlayStation 4. I mean, that was awesome. I remember that was one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 2. But like you said, Last of Us, it was what was the turnover for that? A couple of months? Not even a year.
Yeah, it wasn't that much.
So it almost, I don't know, it almost, would you really qualify that as a remaster at that point? Because it almost just seems like a cross-generation release, like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, where it came out on Xbox 360, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 3.
Yeah, well, it had a more stable frame rate.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like there should almost be like a set grace period before a game should be considered up for remastering.
But you're also going to either buy it or not buy it, so it doesn't really hurt you if they do it. I wonder what our main goal in going to remasters is. Like, is it to get our nostalgia kick again, or
I think so.
Is it to find a way to play a game in a new way, like a sustainable way, like where you could keep playing it in theory forever? So like remastering something on the next generation is great, but it doesn't solve the problem because it's not future forward enough.
Right.
And you're going to run into the same situation that created the reason you remastered it in the first place, is that people want to play it and they can't. Just, you're going to run into it later. But I guess that's infinite profits also, so I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's true. Plus, PlayStation Now is sort of solving that problem because it will always be available on later generations. At least I would hope so, that they would continue to service it with the PlayStation 5 or 6 or 7.
You know what I find really fascinating? That this whole concept of remasters is a console-specific problem.
That's true. Well, it's not entirely true. Like, there's PC games where you got to work around and like DOSBox it and stuff like that, but you're right, it's still possible. It's not out of the realm of
yeah, I mean, like I know that they do like home roll remaster, like I know it does occur, but the prevalence of it has a way lower rate of instance than it does on console, because console is where you see them, like they make these big deals about, hey, we're re-releasing this game from 20 years ago. Whereas on PC, for the most part, at least within the last decade or so, you still have access to games you played back then.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Fallout 1 and 2, I can still load that up on Windows 8 and play it no problem from good old games. And it's preserved on PC, and I'm always going to have access to that, hopefully, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But, like I said, you don't see that on console. Console is where you're really running into that problem where remasters have almost become a necessity if you even want to have access to that content.
Yeah,
that's true. PC doesn't really have generations. It's just always there. Yeah, that's definitely true, yeah.
And I guess they're moving away from backwards compatibility in the console space too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially now that they can just remaster something and sell it to the public again. So, yeah, there's no reason for them to make everything backwards compatible, because in the end, that could potentially lose them money. I think it's a valid business practice. It might be a bit, I want to say disingenuous, because that is what it is. Well, it's a valid practice.
Well, I mean, I was actually going to ask about that. I mean, do you think it can be seen as lazy of a company when they just release a remaster?
It doesn't really have to be that way. And look at the remaster of The Wind Waker, for instance. That was a game that was recreated with love, with respect to the original game. So that was it.
And they had a selfie cam, which was brilliant.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's definitely a good example. But it's scary. It's scary too, because what if one day the profit margin on a remaster, like their graphs don't line up, so they don't release it for that generation, and then the game gets lost to the sands of time?
Well, we'll never truly get lost, especially now that the internet is really commonplace. I mean, you can still find games from 20 years ago somewhere on the internet now, so it's not like it's going to be completely lost unless the internet just stops existing, which I think is unlikely at this point.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I don't think games can be lost. I think games can just be unplayable on certain machines. And that is basically the extent of it.
But I guess that's just me thinking too. I guess that's not the main focus of the remasters either. But it's something they should keep in mind, I think.
I think the main reason for remasters is, one, profit, because again, companies, they want profit, and this will get them profit. Two, they're doing something that people are specifically asking for. So in the end, people are getting what they want. Both parties are getting what they want. I don't see how that's a bad thing.
Everybody wins.
So, we've been talking about, like, I guess the Steam Summer Sale and just, games being preserved digitally now. It kind of made me realize that we're seeing a lot more games being released on a digital marketplace rather than hard copy. You see it now with, like, PlayStation Plus. You see it with, like, Xbox, games for Windows Live. and Steam, and it's a really cool concept that, you know, these games, you no longer need to actually get up and physically go to a store and grab them. But it makes me wonder, like, what are the good and bad sides of this?
Digital is good, but it's also slightly scary.
Because one thing that I noticed with digital games is when you read the fine print, you realize that you don't actually own this product. You know, you're basically you're renting you're renting a license for it. You're paying for the ability to play it. That's it.
Yep, and Steam can giveth and it can taketh away. That is the scary thing about digital stuff. It's not tangible. Whereas physical stuff is, I mean, it's sitting on a shelf and it will stay there forever. There's no danger of it going away for some reason, apart from, you know, destroying the actual disc.
And it's weird though, because I find myself buying certain games physically just because I don't know what it is, but I like having a physical copy of it.
Yeah, it's experience, isn't it? There's no experience associated with digital stuff. You download it, you play it, done. Like for instance, I know I'm going to start about The Witcher 3 again, but I'm going to fucking do it because I can. If you buy that game, you get a map, you get the soundtrack, you get stickers, all that stuff. You don't get that with a digital release. So I tend to go for physical releases more because there's all sorts of extra stuff there and it just looks nice. Plus, if it's a game that I don't like, I can return it. You can't really do that with digital stuff, mostly.
Yeah, well, now you can. Yeah, on Steam, but I guess you're right. With the physical thing, you get the satisfaction of actually owning something instead of scrolling through a list of things you supposedly have the license for.
Yeah, exactly.
But digital is just so much more convenient from every angle. Like, the games load faster because it doesn't have to spin a CD. You can always download them. I guess it's not convenient if you uninstall it, then you want to play it again, you have to re-download it. That part's, I guess, less convenient.
Well, I think people go for physical games much in the same way where some music fans go for vinyl. It's just the experience. It's the tangible thing of going to a store, buying something, having something physically in your bag that you can take home and put somewhere on a shelf. I think that's a huge plus.
You think that's a sustainable model, though? Because, I mean, aside from, like, the big AAA publishers, you don't really see a lot of, you know, hard copy games being released as much anymore.
Yeah. I think it's logical. People go for convenience most of the time, and I can completely understand that. I'm not saying that physical is better or more convenient, because it flat out isn't. Digital is mostly better. It's more convenient. So people tend to go for the thing that's more convenient. And what's more convenient than buying a game from the comfort of your own home, having it download to your console or to your PC, and play the game right there when it's finished downloading without ever having to need to leave the house.
I guess, going a bit on a tangent, do you think we'll ever get to a point where we leave the physical medium behind and we'll see a decrease in the pricing of digital goods?
Yes. I think you're going to see that.
I don't know.
I think that eventually physical goods are gone.
Yeah, but the drop in price?
Drop in price, maybe not.
The pricing is what gets me, because right now you have, like, I don't know, I have a hard time justifying a digital release costing, you know, like the same price as a physical copy.
Sometimes more, for some reason. Like, stuff on the PlayStation Store is ridiculously expensive, especially when compared to the physical stuff.
But as long as they're selling physical copies, the digital has to maintain parity. Otherwise, they're going to sell more of one than the other. And you're going to have just physical copies sitting dead on the shelves. But I think that physical copies are dead anyway, eventually.
They are dying, yep.
When Blu-ray discs came out, Bill Gates said that this is going to be the last physical media format. And I think he might be right. It doesn't seem like anything is going to come up to be the next hardware, actual physical disc format. And I think that games are going to follow that trend too.
Netflix is killing DVDs, Spotify is killing the physical album, and I think digital stores like Steam or GOG are killing physical games.
That's definitely true.
That's what I think. The benefits you mention of physical games are definitely there. I mean, it's definitely a thing that exists, but I think it's just digital. It just carries too much weight. I mean, there's too much gravity associated with the convenience of a digital purchase.
And a lot of people seem to think that. You want to hear some data? Because I
love data.
Right here. This is from 2014, and the data shows that 52% of games are sold via digital formats, and 48% are sold via physical formats, and that includes DLC and mobile games, so the data might be a bit skewed, but I think it's still kind of telling.
Actually, this is a little bit more anecdotal, but during my time at GameStop, one thing that the company itself is obviously, they were known for being a big box retailer for physical games and the used market, and GameStop, I think, is very aware of where the future is heading. Because if you've noticed in the past few years, they've definitely been branching out into the used, mobile market. They actually have stores that can deal entirely with tablets and, used secondhand phones. They recently purchased ThinkGeek, which is it's a retailer for, geek goods. There's a steady shift from the gaming aspect, and they're kind of trying to dip their hands in. I feel like they're trying to find like the next niche because they know that the physical brick and mortar store is it's a losing battle.
That's a good point too. I mean, as far as GameStop goes and reselling used games, you can only do that with physical copies.
Yeah.
So from the eyes of the publisher, going digital is good for them too.
And I'll say this though. During my time at GameStop, one thing that the district managers were constantly saying is that they were really pushing the employee interaction, and they wanted you to talk to customers. They wanted you to kind of go above and beyond, because they told us that at the end of the day, the customer has no motivation to actually buy this physical copy anymore. It's up to you as like the salesperson to kind of create that connection. So they come in to see you, not to buy the game. And it's just really interesting that they have that mentality, because again, it's very telling where even stores like that can acknowledge that there's almost no benefit or motivation for people to come and get a physical copy anymore when the ease of access is right there at their fingertips.
I think that is the long and short of it. Physical releases are seeing sort of downward trend in popularity because they are the less convenient way to acquire games nowadays. But
it's strange though, because despite that, I don't know, like my shelf with all my games lined up is still kind of like a point of pride. I have my World of Warcraft, even though I don't play it anymore, I have my World of Warcraft physical editions, even though you can buy the digital ones now. I still go out and get the little boxes because, I don't know, there's this weird, almost collector's drive in me. I don't know what phrase to put to it.
No, it's definitely a collector's thing. It's just nice to own physical copies of stuff. I do that with CDs as well. And I listen to most, if not all, of my music via Spotify nowadays, but I still want the physical albums that I enjoy. And it's the same for games. Plus, the launch events for a lot of games, especially the ones for World of Warcraft, are pretty cool.
They were pretty cool. The midnight releases are almost like a dead thing now.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Which is really sad.
Yeah, I liked going to those, even if it was for a game that I didn't really want to buy. It was just cool to go to and to see the event.
Mm-hmm. Well, the physical side of games, like, that has merit. Otherwise, digital would have already crushed it. So there's something about physical that's helping it hold on and continue to be something that you want to obtain. But I think that the advantages of digital are only growing every day, and it's only becoming more of a prevalent force. And eventually, looking at everything on a shelf and knowing that you own it and you're a collector, I mean, it's just not gonna be a thing. I just don't see how you, in a world where more people find less value in that and want to acquire digital goods, I can't imagine maybe physical going away completely, but I just don't think that you keep putting discs in every major retail store.
Yeah, it's going to be a niche thing eventually, just for the hardcore gaming enthusiasts. Physical copies are going to remain just for those people.
That's the way it seems to me. But we're not there yet. But it seems like a process that is sort of slowly grinding forward. Like when they announced the Xbox One, like they made a big push. They wanted to do all digital. Like they tried.
Yeah, but there was a huge community backlash.
Right, exactly. And that was then. But, I mean, you can't imagine that they're just going to give up on that because they obviously saw the value in it. I think that they were releasing that system like from 5 years in the future, and the people at that time just weren't ready for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that the backlash was as big as you think it is, because if I look on Reddit, I see a lot of people, they just say that they want digital copies because they like digital copies more than physical ones. So I think it was a vocal minority that was against that.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you guys think is missing that's stopping, I guess, that leap to purely digital from occurring?
It's just not what we're used to.
It's just give it time. It's just a matter of time.
You have to wait for the people who have come up and are very familiar with digital purchases to reach the point in their life where they have disposable income.
I don't know. I feel like we're at least we're closer to that now more than ever. I mean, with the advent of Xbox, games for gold, PlayStation Plus, the whole Steam marketplace. I think digital medium is in your face now. I don't think there's anybody, at least from a gamer standpoint at a young age, that doesn't understand the concept of digital purchasing.
Right, and we have to wait for those people to become the middle income people who are spending money. Like the people who are that right now are the people who grew up on carts, and like NES and Super NES carts. Like we still have that in the back of our head that like games are grounded in that physical nature, but that's not going to be true in another 10 years or so. That's what I think. I think that it's a shift that's happening, and we're just watching that domino slowly fall until eventually there won't be a reason to make physical copies outside of the niche collector market.
Digital hasn't crushed physical yet because digital purchases are comparatively still pretty new.
Mm-hmm. And we're still, we still worry about it a little bit. We still think about the things like you're saying, like we're not buying the game, we're buying the license. That still worries us a little bit. But you let that keep happening, and as time passes, you become more comfortable with it. People come up that didn't even know there was another option, and then eventually the wheels just slowly turn to a point where digital is all that's left, and I'm okay with that.
I even see it in my behavior. I like physical copies more than digital ones, but I've got a lot more digital games than I have physical copies because of the convenience.
I think the digital era definitely scratches that instant gratification itch that we all get. I mean,
oh yeah, definitely.
There's nothing more gratifying than me sitting at dinner with a friend and I get a push notification saying, "Hey, a game that you on your Steam wishlist is on sale," and I can pull up my phone, log into my Steam account, click of a button, buy it, and then have it downloading by the time I get home.
It's less time spent suffering buyer's remorse. That's definitely true.
And it's just, you don't have to actually go to a store, which is, a bummer for me personally. If I have the option, I want to download it here and play it here. I could have the game, even some of the larger titles that I have to download 10 gigs, I could still have it ready to go by the time it would take me to go to the store and come back.
Right.
Yeah. Plus the human interaction factor, but that's just me personally.
Yeah, see, that's one thing, because I do miss, like the midnight releases. I do miss going to the stores and shooting the shit with like the salesperson or like your game guy, because I don't know, like there was that interaction you had with the customers, with the like the other people buying the games, and that's not present anymore with like the advent of digital sales. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, it becomes more crowdsourced, like as far as looking for recommendations and things like that. It becomes like it's not your guy. You're not going to the store talking to your guy and he knows you and he says, "Hey, you might like this." I think people maybe find less value in that. I don't know why. It's never been a huge thing for me, but I know that other people like it a lot.
People look to their favorite YouTuber or their favorite journalist now, and they just see what they recommend. You've got the whole Steam curator stuff going on right now, which is doing exactly that.
So it's an interesting thing. It's not the actual physical copy itself. It's the things and emotions that surround it and the interactions you have with the place you have to go to get it and all those things. It's just a whole pile of factors that are all slowly losing value, in my opinion.
You think it's just a matter of time before, I guess, all those factors are just slowly replaced? Because I know, the social aspect of it, you have it online with community groups and forums and like the specific subreddits, the ease of access, again, you have it. There's almost no need to pre-order games anymore because, with digital sales, you're never going to run into an issue where there's no copies available.
Right, exactly. And that person, your guy at the game store, is lost a lot of ground as the sage and representative to the world of video games now, because you have so much access to information at your fingertips that you don't need like a shaman, you don't need an interpreter, you don't need somebody to tell you what's going on with video games. You can find it out for yourself.
I don't know, speak for yourself. I used to be that game guy and I've only grown.
Maybe. But I don't know. I've never put a huge amount of value on that, but it just seems like it's just not worth it to me.
So before we stop, because we done all the topics that we wanted to do, I've got 2 questions here from people.
Wow.
Ooh, wow. This is a thing.
That was a little surprise. Yes, it is a thing. It is most definitely a thing. All right, the first one comes in from someone called Rock Sushi, although I do suspect that this is not his or her real name. Did you guys ever thought of talking about sex in video games in general, e.g. how it's presented, how it was presented in the past, and how much has it improved overall over the past few years? The Witcher series comes to my mind, which doesn't really have awkward sex scenes, especially the second and third have some of the best sex scenes in the entire gaming environment.
That's a bold claim.
And I also think that the main problem is that sex is still a taboo thing almost everywhere on this planet. Killing people / animals is okay. Looking at a single nipple is not. What do you guys think about it? And do you also think it's in part more of a social issue rather than a video game subculture issue, since it just screams backward thinking, in my personal opinion?
Part of that is true.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of things because on the one hand, I definitely do agree that we're still very prude as a society, or at least in terms of media. Like you said, people will lose their collective shits if there's a nipple on screen, but you're fine, gouging and murdering and maiming.
Yeah. Violence is sort of more accepted in video games because, well, violence is prevalent in every other medium.
Well, I mean, at least in America, we're founded by Puritans, so it's hard to get away. It's hard to get away from that.
Well, and I'm going to phrase this in a way that I hope I don't offend anybody because I'm not doing this, but I do think that there is a certain rise and more awareness in terms of how race and gender are treated, especially culturally, especially in the geek culture, that I think a lot of developers shy away from including any kind of sexual content because of how it might be misinterpreted by others.
So they're just playing it safe.
Yeah, because I mean, you could have a sex scene and it's a very real possibility that sex scene might offend somebody because maybe the woman didn't get enough time on top, or maybe it's, they see it as a dominance thing, or maybe like it could just be interpreted in so many different ways.
Or even just the fact that it's a sex scene at all.
Exactly. And I think it's just a matter of them playing it safe, where they'd rather say, you know what, we'd rather just not deal with this can of worms, and we're just going to stick to, burning the village of orphans.
But you have to make a video game where it fits in the context, like where it actually adds something to the story you're trying to tell or adds something to the game you're trying to make. And I don't think that situation pops up enough for them to be able to get the practice in, because when you see it, it still seems a little ham-fisted and it seems a little weird because they're not doing it to actively get better at implementing it.
Right.
Yeah. The last time that I thought a sex scene was pretty well implemented was in the Mass Effect series because of what it meant for the character that you're playing. And not because of the way it looked, because... no.
I don't know. Commander Shepard seemed kind of like slutty to me. I don't know. Shepard's like the poster boy for sexual harassment.
How does he get so many girls with that 1,000-yard stare?
Forget that. How does he not get reported to HR for like half of the... come on. He is throwing his penis or vagina, like whichever gender you want to play, but like you're literally flashing at every member of your crew. Like, how is that okay?
Not in my playthrough.
Yeah, not in mine either. What was your thing?
Well, obviously, let's just say,
what was it?
I mean, it's a risk-averse industry. I think you have to remember that first and foremost, especially when it comes to AAA titles.
No. Let's go back a bit.
Okay,
Enrique, who was your romantic interest? Or I'm probably thinking
all
that,
of them.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I had to choose, I'd say Garrus.
Yeah, Garrus is a fucking bro. Mine's Liara every single time.
You know what? It would have been, except I think Mass Effect 3 had a really creepy realization where there's those 3 guys. There's the Turian, the human, and I think was it the Volus? Mm-hmm. And they're sitting at at that bachelor party in the bar.
Oh yeah.
And there's like that. What is it like? There's one of them dancing, and if you eavesdrop, you find out that I guess to them the Asari look like the sexualized epitome of whatever that like their own race is.
Yeah.
So to the Turians, an Asari looks like a blue Turian with some weird, like the skull, and for the Volus it looks the same. For humans, look the same. So it makes you wonder, like, what the hell do these people actually look like?
Yeah, I've heard it said, or I've seen it debated on the internet, that they look closer to their Reaper version than you'd think.
Ooh.
Which would be fucking terrifying. but still, Liara's awesome. She's my gal.
Yeah, but I guess all joking aside, though, I do agree, though. Like games like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, especially The Witcher, they use sex to kind of show a culmination of the relationship you have with like these specific characters. So I think in that context, it's tastefully done. But I mean, even then, those games weren't without their backlash and critiques because of it.
Yeah, which I thought was weird, because the sex scenes were extremely tame in both Dragon Age and in Mass Effect. They're a lot more explicit in The Witcher 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm. But the technology isn't there to capture that nuance, though, so they're still a little weird. I mean, like, they're done okay, but there's a lot to try and sort of translate into the digital format when you're talking about sex. Like, it's easy to just show a still of somebody stabbing somebody, but like working in like the whole sort of nebulous interaction, and like so much is said and conveyed through very small body language movements and things like that. And I just don't think video games have the tools they need to portray that in a way that even begins to come close to the actual human interaction of two people having sex with each other.
And again, I mean, I think even if we did have like the tools for it, again, because it's such a risk averse industry, I think that not a lot of people would be willing to step up to the plate and use it.
So there you go. There you go. Rock Lobster. What was it? Rock Lobster? Rock sushi. Rock sushi.
Close enough.
He had two questions, actually.
All right.
The second one is a bonus question, he calls it, or he or she. Are item sets, like, again, in The Witcher 2 or 3, a reasonable design choice? If I recall correctly, The Witcher 2 has only the sets in the dark mode, which is a bit questionable for me. Item sets, man. I like that.
Yeah.
And especially how they're done in The Witcher. They're sort of scavenger hunts. I quite like that, actually. And I think it's cool that, in a lot of MMOs, you get bonuses if you've got the complete set and stuff. It's something to strive for. It's gated content that keeps you playing for longer because you want that complete set. It's basically easy content for the developers.
Yep, I like it. I like complete sets that give you something once you get them all together. And when they're done in such a way that having them all is better than just a ragtag sort of mix of good items. But that's the problem, is that sometimes by the time you obtain the whole set, everything else you have is just way better, even though it looks like crap.
Yes.
I mean, I like them. Like you said, it gives you something else to work towards. A lot of those like item sets, they end up becoming more like a flavor item / prestige. You go out because, hey, it's cool. One of my favorite implementations is on Assassin's Creed. You get like those really cool, like unique throwback armor sets. I think was Assassin's Creed 2 had the Romulus armor.
Oh right, yeah, the one that you could get by doing all the like the platforming stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. It adds, it adds a little bit of extension to the gameplay, just something fun to strive for, and then you have a visual representation of your achievement.
And I like it when it's a story, like all the pieces of this legendary person's armor that have been scattered throughout time to all these different places, and you kind of try to round them up and then put them all on you at the same time. I like it when stories are told that way too.
But Sam, you don't like stories.
I know, but it's a good MacGuffin. And plus, that's like 6 individual challenge rooms, right? So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, item sets, I quite like them. And there's one more. This comes in from a person called Fupo Noob.
All right.
I hope I pronounced that correctly. He asks, may I know the process of recording the podcast? Like, what software do you use to record, to edit, and which VoIP do you guys use to talk to each other? I think I'm in the best position to answer that one.
Yep. I just work here.
I just talk to a mic.
Yeah, exactly. We all do that. Once we're all done talking into a mic and we record using Audacity, I not usually, always import them into FL Studio, which is the same software I use to make my music with. So I'm really accustomed to how that software works. And then I cut out like uncomfortable silences, remove things one of us has said that doesn't really add anything to the conversation. Basically, just giving the podcast a bit of a facelift so it sounds better and there's a better flow and stuff like that. Then I do some basic compressing and limiting, so mastering for short. And then I edit in all the musical cues that we have, and we release it. And that is basically how we're doing it. And of course, we're talking to each other via Skype right now because my two compatriots, they're in the US and I am in the Netherlands. So yeah, that's how we do it.
Is it?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for sending in that question, Poopanoop. And that was it. Right, if you want to ask us anything, you can send us an email at selectcharacters@gmail.com, or you can go to ask.fm/selectcharacters and send us a message, and we'll talk about it, because we like to hear from you guys. All right, I think that is us for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you again next week. And of course, as always, you can find all the things that we've been talking about in this episode in the show notes below this video or below this post or on whatever site this is on. So yeah, thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Later.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.